السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وهو يتولى الصالحين، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم، صلاة والسلاما دائمين متلازمين ليوم الدين. أما بعد، حياكم الله ومرحبا بطالب العلم. This is our 11th sitting going through the kitab Al-Arba'een An-Nawawiyyah, the Imam Sharf ibn Yahya ibn Murri An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala. And we're still in the second hadith, and inshallah ta'ala we'll complete the hadith today بإذن ta'ala. فليتفضل الأخ القارئ وفقه الله والسامعين يقرأ لنا الحديث إلى من حيث وقفنا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، صل وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم اغفر لنا ولشيخنا ولوالديه وللسامعين. أما بعد، قال المؤلف رحمه الله: الحديث الثاني عن عمر رضي الله عنه أيضا قال: بينما نحن عند رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ذات يوم، إذ طلع علينا رجل شديد بياض الثياب شديد سواد الشعر، لا يرى عليه أثر السفر ولا يعرفه منا أحد، حتى جلس إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فأسند ركبتيه إلى ركبتيه ووضع كفيه على فخذيه وقال: يا محمد، أخبرني عن الإسلام. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: الإسلام أن تشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله، وتقيم الصلاة وتؤتي الزكاة وتصوم رمضان وتحج البيت إن استطعت إليه السبيل. قال: صدقت. فعجبنا له يسأله ويصدقه. قال: فأخبرني عن الإيمان. قال: أن تؤمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله واليوم الآخر وتؤمن بالقدر خيره وشره. قال: صدقت.
أحسنت. نعم. We left off on the fifth pillar of Iman, which is Al-Iman bil-Yawm al-Akhir. So when Jibreel, who came in the form of a man, asked the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, "Ma huwa al-Iman?" What is Iman? Yani, what are the pillars of Al-Iman? The Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam mentioned 6 pillars. We left off on the 5th pillar, Al-Iman bil-Yawm al-Akhir. But when Ahl al-Ilm, when they speak about Aqidah bil-Yawm al-Akhir, Al-Aqidah when it comes to the last day, they divide it into 4 points. Okay, so when you look at the books of Ahl Sunnah, when they speak about Aqidatuna bil-Yawm al-Akhir, wal-Iman bil-Yawm al-Akhir, they divide it into 4 points. The first is belief in the signs of the hour. They start with speaking about the signs of the hour, which divides into 2, major signs and minor signs. The second is Iman bil Maut. They speak about Iman when it comes to death. The third is Al-Iman bil Barzakh. They speak about the life of, or Iman bil Barzakh, which is the life under the grave. The fitna of the grave, the question of the 2 angels, its pleasures and its torments, and so forth. And the fourth is the situations of the day of resurrection and what it entails. And this includes 9 things. Nafkhat al-sur, which is the blowing of the trumpets. Al-ba'th, which is the resurrection. Al-hashru, which is the gathering. Al-mizan, which is the scale. Suhuf al-a'mal, which is the record of books where our deeds are written. Al-shafa'ah, which is the intercession. Al-hawd, which is the fountain. Al-sirat, which is the bridge. And Jannah and Nar, and paradise and hellfire. Yani the attributes of the inhabitants, what Allah Azza wa Jal has prepared for their people in its general and in its detail. And all of these 4 points that we mentioned, and the fourth that we said 9 things come under it, is spoken about in detail, extreme detail, in books of Aqidah. And our Saturday classes, where we're going through the Kitab A'lam Sunnah al-Manshura, we're currently on this mas'ala, where we're speaking about it in extreme detail. مسائل فيما يتعلق الإيمان باليوم الآخر. And from the fruits, يعني subhanallah, from the fruits of truly having Iman bil-yawm al-akhir is the more knowledge you have and certainty you have of the hereafter, the more it consoles the believer. It's consoling to the believer for what they miss in this world and what they hope for in the reward of the hereafter. ولذلك جاء في الحديث في صحيح مسلم, hadith narrated by Anas ibn Malik رضي الله عنه, where he said that the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said يؤتى يوم القيامة بأنعم أهل الدنيا من الكفار فيقال ابصروا فيقال اغمسوا في النار خمسة واحدة فيغمس فيها ثم يقال له أي فلان هل أصابك نعيم هل أصابك نعيم قط فيقول له ما أصابني نعيم قط ويؤتى بأشد المؤمنين ضرا وبلاء فيقال اغمسوه غمسة في الجنة فيغمس فيها غمسة فيقال له أي فلان هل أصابك ضر قط أو بلاء فيقول ما أصابني قط ضر ولا بلاء. In the hadith, the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said, among the people of the hellfire, a person who had the most luxurious life in this dunya, he will be brought on the day of resurrection, and he will just be dipped in the hellfire, just dipped inside. And it will be said to him, Ya ibn Adam, child of Adam, son of Adam, did you ever experience any comforts? This is a person who lived a luxurious life in the dunya. He will reply, by Allah, no, I have not. And then a person of Jannah who had a miserable life in this dunya, or a difficult life, someone who was trialed and went through calamities and tribulations, he will be dipped into Jannah. He will just be dipped inside of it. And then it will be asked to him, O son of Adam, did you experience any misery? Did you encounter any difficulty? And he will say, by Allah, no, I have not. I have never experienced misery or hardship. It shows you, subhanallah, ya ikhwata, the more you learn about the akhirah, the more iman you have about the akhirah, the less concern you will give to this life, the less significant this life is to us, or will be to you. فما هو الدنيا إلا قليل وما بقي منه إلا قليل وما الحياة الدنيا إلا لعب وله ولدار الآخرة خير للذين يتقون. فهذا ما يتعلق بإيمان بيوم الآخر. Then he said, عليه الصلاة والسلام, after mentioning the fifth pillar, he mentions وَتُؤْمِنَ بِالْقَدْرِ خَيْرِهِ وَشَرِّهِ. The last pillar of Iman is to believe in Al-Qadr. In books of Aqidah, يا إخوة, the masala of having Iman bil-Yawm al-Akhir and the masala of having Iman bil-Qadr are the two masail that are spoken about in detail in books of Aqidah. Okay? In most detail compared to the other pillars. And it's more um, there's more masail يعني. As for Iman bil-Qadr, the most important of that which consists of having Iman bil-Qadr goes back to four matters. The first is believing that everything that occurs in this universe is attributed to Allah's knowledge, His writing, His will, and His creation. That's the first matter. So as I mentioned, having Iman bil Qadr consists of many masail, many issues. And the most important of them is four matters. The first is to believe that everything occurs in this universe, everything that occurs in this universe is attributed to Allah's knowledge, His writing, His will, and His creation. And these four matters are maratib al-qadr, as the scholars they mention, the ranks of qadr, that which the messengers and the salaf have agreed upon. And they say the levels of al-qadr consist of four things. The first is al-ilm. And the meaning of knowledge is Allah Azza wa Jal, he has all encompassing knowledge of everything. وَسِعَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ عِلْمًا. For Allah Azza wa Jal, He knows what was, what will be, what was not, and how it would have been if it had occurred. For Allah Azza wa Jal, He knows what does not exist and how it would be if it existed. For it is not possible for anything to occur contrary to the qadr, because the decree is associated with Allah's eternal knowledge. There is nothing hidden from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the second is al-kitaba, the writing, that which was written in al-Lawh al-Mahfud, the preserved tablet. Allah Azza wa Jal created the pen and then ordered it to write in the preserved tablet everything that will occur up until the day of judgment. But the one who ordered the pen to write is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is not possible for there to be any change or any substitution, تغيير ولا تبديل, of that which was written in the preserved tablet, al-Lawh al-Mahfud, because it agrees and conforms with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his eternal knowledge. إِنَّا نَحْنُ نُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى وَنَكْتُبُ مَا قَدَّمُوا وَآثَارَهُم وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَيْنَاهُ فِي إِمَامٍ مُبِينٍ, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Surah Yasin. Everything has been written, enumerated in a clear register, يعني لوح المحفوظ. The kitab of Allah Azza wa Jal, the kitaba, the writings of two types: the writing that is in al-Lawh al-Mahfuz and the writing that is in the suhuf of the angels, the scrolls that the angels write upon, and in the deeds of Bani Adam. And the difference between the preserved tablet and the scrolls that the angels write upon is that the preserved tablet, nothing can be changed in it. Everything that will happen until the day of judgment is written on that. As for the scrolls that the angel they write upon, it can be removed and changed and substituted. And then the third is al-Mashi'ah, the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Irada al-Kawniyah, the universal will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That everything in existence is by Allah's will. Whatever He willed occurs. Whatever He does not will does not occur. And the slave will follow and is under Allah's will. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلِيمًا حَكِيمًا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, you cannot will unless Allah Azza wa Jal wills. And the fourth aspect is al-khalq, the creation. Meaning that Allah Azza wa Jal alone is the creator and everything besides Him is created. Allahu khaliqu kulli shay. But this is the first thing. If I go back, we mentioned when it comes to belief in Qadr, there's a lot of masail. Okay? And we mentioned the most important of those masail are four things. The first, what I just mentioned now, is the first thing. That we believe everything that occurs in this universe is attributed to four things: Allah's knowledge, His writing, His will, and His creation. Okay? But that's the first masala. The second is the belief, or to believe that there is no contradiction between affirming the will of the servants and their actions and affirming Allah's will for the actions of the servants and His creation of them. There's no contradiction between these four matters. فَكُلُّهَا حَقٌّ وَكُلُّهَا ثَابِتَةٌ. The belief that there is no contradiction. لا تعارض بين إثبات مشيئة العباد وأفعالهم وإثبات مشيئة الله لأفعال العباد وخلقه لها. There is no contradiction between affirming the will of the servants and their actions and affirming Allah's will for the actions of the servants and His creation of them. For both the slave and his actions are a part of Allah's creation, and Allah created the slave and his actions. Does that make sense? So if it is asked, how can Allah be the creator of the slave's actions and the actions are attributed to the slave? If that question is asked, how can Allah be the creator of the slave's action and the actions are attributed to the slave? We say because Allah Azza wa Jal created the slave and He placed within him both a will and ability. Placed within him both a will and a ability. and his actions are the result of that or consequence of that. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also the creator of the results of both the will and the ability. So nothing is outside of Allah's creation. And that is why Ahlul Ilm they say the nullifiers of Iman bil Qadr is two things. The belief that Allah compels or forces the slave to act, and the belief that the slave create their own actions. These are the two nullifiers of Qadr that the scholars they mention. Yani number one, what? The belief that Allah forces the slaves in regards to their actions. For whoever believes that the slave has or the servant has no ability of his own, no actions of his own, and that Allah Azza wa Jal forces him or makes him do what he does, then that person, his Iman is nullified. His Iman in Al-Qadr, in a divine decree, is nullified. For the slave has an ability, he has a will. He is the one who acted, and the action is attributed to him on account of that. I'll give an example, ya ikhwata. When a person prays, the prayer is attributed to him, صح? Because he is the one who engaged in the action. However, the one who created the slave and the prayer is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the action is attributed to the slave due to him engaging in it. And it is said the slave is the one who is praying, and it is attributed to Allah in terms of the creation. Meaning we say Allah Azza wa Jal is the one who created the slave and his prayer and his salah. Al-Jabbariyah, they went astray in this and they say that Allah Azza wa Jal is the one praying because he compelled the slave to act. This is the belief of those who have deviated in this. And the other nullifier we mentioned is the belief that the slave created his own actions. This is another extreme. Whoever believes that the slave is the one who creates his actions, meaning he is the one who created his prayer, an example I gave, then this is one of the nullifiers of the belief in the divine decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the one who created the prayer is Allah Azza wa Jal. There is no creator besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where the Qadariyah they went astray. Because they affirm the free will for a human, but they deny the divine decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Jabariyah they went the opposite. They affirm the divine decree but deny free will for the servant. These are two deviated sects. But this is how Shaitan beautified for them the path of misguidance, going extreme either one side or the other side. Ashahid, that's the second point. Okay. The belief that there is no contradiction between affirming the will of the servants and their actions and affirming Allah's will for the actions of the servants and his creation of them. That's the second important point, that which consists of having Iman bil Qadr. The third out of the four, which is the most important masail when it comes to Al-Qadr or Iman bil Qadr, is the belief that guidance and misguidance are in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he guides who he wills as a grace and a favor, and he leads astray who he wills as a wisdom and justice, and from justice, from wisdom and with justice. حكمة منه وعدل. And the fourth main important point when it comes to al-Iman bil Qadr is to believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created everything, but evil is not to be attributed to him subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the fourth. And by the way, ya ikhwata, these four that I just mentioned, yani spoken about extreme detail in books of Aqidah. Okay? Like now we're just mentioning the points. Because ليس مقامه is not his place to speak about these masail in detail. For the fourth is what? We believe Allah Azza wa Jal created everything, the good and the bad, but we don't attribute or we do not attribute evil to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like someone may ask, what about the verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ. It is He who created from the evil that He has created. مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ. The Mu'tazila, they say the ma here, min sharri ma khalaq, they say this is ma'un nafi. They say it means Allah did not create evil. And this is incorrect. This is doing altering the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We affirm that Allah Azza wa Jal created the good and the bad. Min sharri ma khalaq. He created good and bad. Lakin, we do not attribute bad or evil to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the hadith in front of us, when the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, Al-Iman bil-Qadr, tu'minu bil-Qadr, khayrihi wa sharrihi. The good and the bad. The good and the evil of the Qadr. For we believe Allah Azza wa Jal created everything, the good and the bad, but we do not attribute evil to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because the will of Allah Azza wa Jal is divided into two. When Allah Azza wa Jal wills something, it's two types. The first is iradatu shar'iyyah. This is a legislative will. This is the will of Allah Azza wa Jal that is in accordance to what He loves and is pleased with. But it's connected to what He has commanded the people with and enjoined them upon. يعني إرادة الشرعية, the legislative will, it is based upon what He wants for His servants, what He's pleased with and commands them to do. For Allah loves for His servants good. He loves for His servants to pray. He loves for His servants to do righteous actions. وإرادة الشرعية, this first type of will of Allah Azza wa Jal, it is not a must that it will occur. Okay, it's possible it may occur, and it's possible it may not occur. But Allah Azza wa Jal loves for His servants to pray. But it could be that not all His servants pray. مثلا. That's the first type of will of Allah Azza wa Jal. The second type of will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what is called al-irada al-kawniyya, the universal will of Allah Azza wa Jal. And this relates to everything that Allah Azza wa Jal wills, His action, and what He brings into existence. For this includes what He loves and what He what He does not love in regards to in His essence of that thing. Allah Azza wa Jal, He does not love disobedience, but it occurs on the earth because it's irada al-kawniyya, it's Allah's universal will. Whatever He wills is according to His perfect wisdom, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and His complete knowledge of the consequences. So, yeah, Allah's legislative will includes what Allah Azza wa Jal loves and is pleased with. However, it may occur, may not occur. And irada al-kawniyya, Allah's universal will, it includes what Allah Azza wa Jal is pleased with and what Allah Azza wa Jal is not pleased with in its essence. But He's pleased with it from another angle, which I will explain. And this is something that will definitely occur, as Allah has been written, has been decreed. So if someone may ask now, قد يسأل السائل, how can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will something that He does not love? How can Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will something that He does not love? Everything that Allah Azza wa Jalla loves, ya ikhwata, is good, wise, and is just. Allah Azza wa Jal, He does what He does for reasons that are known to Him. His slaves, or some of them, may know some of those reasons, or due to the limited minds of the servant, he may be unable to comprehend much of the divine wisdom behind these things. Allah Azza wa Jal, Huwal Hakim, is the most wise. He does not do anything in vain or without a purpose. For example, the creation of Iblis, Shaitan, and evil things that you see around you. Because of these things, many things happen which Allah Azza wa Jal loves, like repenting, striving, seeking forgiveness. That's what Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in the Quran, Surah Rum. ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس ليذيقهم بعض الذي عملوا لعلهم يرجعون. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned corruption has appeared throughout the land and the sea because of what the people have earned through their own sins. ليذيقهم بعض الذي عملوا لعلهم يرجعون, so that they may taste a consequence of what they have done. Perhaps they may return to righteousness. For Allah Azza wa Jal, He hates disbelief and disobedience, in its essence, but he decrees them because of the benefits that results from them. For they're disliked by him subhanahu wa ta'ala in one respect and beloved by him in another respect, which makes it a good and not an evil. For when we attribute it to Allah, it's considered, when we attribute to Allah, we say it is good. We attribute only good to Allah Azza wa Jal. When we attribute to the creation, we say it is evil. If it were not for disbelief and disobedience, would iman and faith, would it be known? Righteousness, would it be known? If all the people were believers, everyone done righteous deeds, there will be no distinction. The value of iman, the value of faith and righteous deeds will not be known. And as for the tests through calamities, there's wisdoms from that. Allah Azza wa Jalla raises the ranks of the servants. It could be that that servant does not attain Jannah by his own actions. So Allah Azza wa Jalla gives him tests and trials, so by that he will attain Jannah. And Allah Azza wa Jalla, He's the creator, and He's decreed their existence for the goods and benefits that they entail. And this is logically acceptable or accepted. For the evil that is present in the universe, it may be evil from one perspective, or it's good from another perspective. Every type of evil leads to a greater good. For wisdom necessitates their existence rather than their absence. The scholars they mention that every evil that is on this earth, it leads to a greater good. For wisdom necessitates their existence rather than their absence. I'll give you an example. Water. Okay, someone can say water can be cause of a great flood, which can destroy and corrupt towns. But we may reply to that. This same water brings about many benefits. So people need water for drinking, for cleaning, for enjoyment, and other things. So the existence of water results in much good and little evil. The evil that occurs is enveloped in wisdom and benefits, some which are recognized by those who look at this matter with an eye of fairness. An example I'll give, which is tangible. If a man, his son, if he had a son, and the doctor said to him that he said to the father, um, that I have to cut the stomach of your son open in front of you to remove his appendix or a diseased organ. And the father, he has to see the intestines in front of him. Is that something he will like, Yani the father? Is that something would he like to see the stomach of his son being cut open? From one's perspective, he won't like it, sir. Like in the benefits that result from it, he will love that because he wants this disease to be removed. And from the means of that is the help of the doctor. For it becomes beloved and hated. Likewise, evil deeds and disbelief is beloved and hated. For claiming that any evil or bad in this universe is done without a good reason and lacks any benefits, and this is what the atheists they claim and they believe, and they say that God is evil. They say all of that stuff. They say, why is there evil on this earth? There's no benefit in it. There's no good reason behind it. This point, it has no defense. There's no defense they can come with because it requires comprehensive knowledge, which humans lack. To claim that the existence of evil brings no benefit whatsoever, whether that is immediately or in long term, one needs to have vast, encompassing knowledge. So, and the reality is that humans' knowledge is limited and insufficient. I'll give you an example, ya ikhwata. If from a distance someone sees two individuals holding a child with a saw, okay, and from a distance he sees two men trying to cut the leg of a child with a saw, your first thought when you see that, you're thinking this is evil, sir. Lakin, it's unreasonable and unfair to judge the situation as good or evil based solely on the observation without understanding the context. They could be criminals, صح. Lakin it could be a doctor, and the other man could be the child's father, and the child is suffering from a condition that, if not treated by amputating the leg, it could lead to death. صح أم لا? But in this case, wisdom and mercy dictates that the amputation of the child's survival, which is a better outcome, which is a good outcome. But if someone claims that existing evil existing in this world serves no purpose or beneficial purpose, we say to them that such a claim requires to have all-encompassing understanding of the reality from every angle, which is unattainable. That knowledge is of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. And of knowledge, you mankind have been given only a little. For evil in this world is part of the overall goodness of the world. And this perspective should be holistic, yani not partial. We make a mistake, the servants of or children of Adam, they make a mistake when we restrict our view to just a small part instead of looking at the whole picture. If you stood behind a beautiful painting and you focused only on a small line of it, you wouldn't see its beauty. If you looked at its entirety, you sat back or you stepped back, you look at the entire picture, you'd recognize its beauty and its excellence. But similarly, the existence of these evils in the world is part of the beauty that will appear to you. If you look at the entirety of the world, what value does health have if we never knew sickness? What value does wealth have if we never knew poverty? What value does success have if we never knew if there were no efforts and hardship? Imagine life without any misfortunes, obstacles, or difficulties. It will be bland, صح? It will be lacking flavor, color. For we understand goodness of things by the opposites. بضدها تبين الأشياء. As they say, but it's by the opposites the beauty is revealed. Yani opposites reveal the beauty of each other. We will not recognize a straight line if we did not know what a crooked one was. For it is through opposite that things become clear. For misfortune, trials, various forms of evil are necessary for the world's beauty. The beauty of a palace, مثلا, includes the existence of a bathroom, which is a place for akramakum Allah, releasing one's urine and feces and foul odors. Without it, the palace would lack completeness and lose part of its beauty, صح? For this is how we should view the matter. And in summary, regards to this, the fourth mas'ala, our belief as Muslims regarding to the occurrence of evil in this world is based upon two pillars. The first is the perfection of Allah Azza wa Jalla in His knowledge, His wisdom, His mercy, His might, His justice, and His dominion. That's the first. That's the first pillar. When we this mas'ala of evil that occurs in this dunya, we as Muslims, we see this based upon two pillars. The first is we believe and we understand the perfection of Allah in His knowledge, His wisdom, His mercy, His might, His justice, and His dominion. And the second pillar is the imperfection of the servant in his aql, in his intellect, in his knowledge, his capability, his perception. نحن مساكين يعني we are servants, we are limited. ومن الأعجب الأمور, some servants they try and challenge Allah Azza wa Jal with their aql that was created by Allah Azza wa Jal. Miskeen wallah. How can someone try to challenge Allah with his aql, his intellect, when Allah Azza wa Jal is the one that created your intellect, your aql? Al-Maqsood, these are the four most important points when it comes to Al-Iman bil-Qadr. And as I mentioned, these matters are spoken about in extreme detail in books of Aqidah. Inshallah ta'ala, in our Saturday classes, um, in these classes, we go through these masail in extreme detail. So these are the six pillars of Al-Iman. And I remind you, Yara'akumullah, that Iman, having Iman in the six, it consists of Al-Iman al-Mujmal wa Iman al-Mufassal. It consists of having a general amount of Iman that which is wajib, and a consists of a more detailed amounts of iman. The general is believing in it in yani his general form, to believe in Allah Azza wa Jal, the four things we mentioned, that He is our Lord, yani His rububiyyah, His uluhiyyah, His asma wa sifat, His existence. To believe in the angels, is the books, the messengers, the day of judgment, yani that there is a day after, or there is a next life. Believing in the qadr, in the decree of Allah Azza wa Jal, believing it as a whole. That's wajib on every Muslim. Then there comes al-iman al-mufassal, the detailed understanding, and this is connected to knowledge. So when knowledge reaches you concerning some related matters pertaining to these pillars in more detail, then it's wajib to believe in it. For this is based upon knowledge. When the knowledge reaches you, to believe in it. I'll give an example, a belief in the angels. If what's obligatory is believing in the creation, okay? But when it comes to you, or the knowledge comes to you, the names of some of the angels, or the jobs or duties of some of the angels, the knowledge comes to you with its evidences, then it becomes wajib that you believe in that. Okay? When the knowledge reaches you. For that's Iman Mufassal, to believe in it in the pillar in more detail, and that's connected to the knowledge. ولا شك, perfection lies with knowledge. The more knowledge you have, the more Iman you have in these pillars. And as I mentioned before, ya ikhwata, our Iman, our faith is built upon these six pillars. For a Muslim should always strive in revising these six pillars, reading about it, studying it, teaching it. For our Iman is built upon the six pillars. These are pillars, yani, that which everything else is established upon. نعم نعم تفضلوا اقرأ.
قال فأخبر أحسن الله إليكم. قال فأخبرني عن الإحسان. قال أن
قبل
تعبد
هذا
الله.
قبل هذا
أوكي. قال فأخبرني عن الإيمان. قال أن تؤمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله واليوم الآخر وتؤمن بالقدر خيره وشره. قال صدقت. قال
نعم
فأخبر.
نعم قال صدقت. For after the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام answered the question of Jibreel, ما هو الإيمان, and Jibreel answered the question, sorry, the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام answered the question of Jibreel. Then Jibreel عليه السلام, he said قال صدقت, he said you have spoken the truth. And this shows the permissibility of asking about something you know the answer to in order to teach others who do not know. This shows the permissibility of asking about something you know the answer to in order to teach others who do not know. But Jibreel, he knows the answer to these questions. Like he's asking the Messenger والسلام, why? To teach the others, teach the Sahaba. We spoke about it in the beginning of explaining this hadith, when we spoke about the cause of this hadith. And why was this hadith mentioned? What was the cause? We spoke about that, sah? Because the Sahaba, they felt shy to ask questions to the Messenger والسلام. So Jibreel came in the form of a man to ask the Messenger والسلام, so that the Sahaba can benefit. فthere's a قاعدة here, المتسبب له حكم المباشر إذا كانت المباشرة مبنية على سبب. The direct cause has a ruling of the direct action if the direct action is based upon the cause. For Jibreel, he knew the answers, but he asked in front of the Sahaba for them to learn. And this is a way of giving da'wah. Okay? So I'll give an example. If you're in a gathering where your family are and your cousins are there, and you know that your cousins or your family, they're not as practicing as you, and they're shy to ask about the religion, or they're not as practicing. And you have a brother, your blood brother, who is also practicing like you, and you're in this gathering with your cousins. You can make your brother ask you a question that he may know the answer to, but he'll ask you a question, you answer him in front of your cousins so that they can benefit. Because you know your cousins are not as practicing, or they may feel shy to ask. So you use your brother who's practicing like you to ask you a question in the deen, and he may know the answer, and you answer in front of them so that they benefit, yani the cousins or the family in the gathering. So this is min al-hikmah. It's from wisdom in giving da'wah, and this is permissible, as Jibril did here with the Messenger, alayhi salatu wassalam. And this person, al-mutasabbib, he gets the reward as if he's teaching them. He gets the reward as if he's teaching them. The person gets the reward as if he taught the knowledge, which comes from the principle of the hadith. على المعنى أدال على خير كفاعله. The one who directs to the good is like the one who done the good. And that is why when it comes to lessons and muhadarat, the ones who aid the lessons in organizing the lessons, and if there's a knowledge based seminar, if he's the one who organized it and helped in uh, guiding other brothers and sisters to attend, he gets a reward as if he's teaching the knowledge as well. المتسبب له حكم المباشر إذا كان مباشر مبنية على السبب، فهذه القاعدة. نعم، تفضل اقرأ.
أحسن الله إليكم. قال فأخبرني عن الإحسان. قال أن تعبد الله كأنك تراه فإن لم تكن تراه فإنه يراك.
نعم. Now, this is the third question. Jibreel, he asks the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام عن الإحسان، فأخبرني عن الإحسان. الإحسان يا إخوته, linguistically in Arabic language, it means الإحكام والإتقان, to perfect and master, to perfect something or to master something. And Allah Azza wa Jalla has commanded al-ihsan, and He informed us that He loves the people of ihsan. وَأَحْسِنُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned. As for ihsan in the Sharia, his terminology in the Sharia, it refers to performing acts على أتم أحواله وأكملها وأعلاها وأرفعها. It refers to performing acts in the most complete, elevated, and excellent manner. That's the meaning of ihsan in the Sharia. And this applies to three things. Okay, performing acts in the most complete, elevated, and excellent manner refers to three things. Al-ibadah, worship. Al-huquq, when it comes to rights. And sa'ir al-umur, and other matters besides this. But let's start with the first. Ihsan fil ibadah. Having ihsan in worship. Ihsan in worship can be divided into two. But the scholars, they say ihsan in worship can be divided into two. The first is al-qadr al-mujzi', the sufficient amount for the action to be considered hasanan, yani for the action to be considered valid or good. Meaning that it should be sincere, the action, worship has to be for Allah Azza wa Jalla alone, and is accordance to the sunnah of the Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam. For this one, he performs the worship in a manner that fulfills the requirements. For it fulfills the conditions, the pillars, and the format are met for the worship to be valid. Okay, that's the first type of ihsan, that which is the sufficient amounts, al-qadr al-mujzi, for the action to be valid. Yani basically fulfilling the conditions of worship. And the conditions of worship is um, that it has to be with sincerity, and it has to be in accordance to the sunnah of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. The second category of ihsan is al-qadr al-mustahab, the recommended amounts. So the first was the obligatory amounts. Okay. The second is the recommended amounts, and that's what is mentioned in the hadith. And the recommended amounts, it consists of two ranks. The first rank is called al-muqam al-muraqabah. And this is where the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said here in the hadith, فَإِن لَمْ تَكُنْ تَرَاهُ فَإِنَّهُ يَرَاكُ. And this is called maqam al-muraqabah, the level of, the rank of al-muraqabah. Some scholars, they also call it martabatul khawf or martabatul harab, the rank of fear and fleeing to worship Allah Azza wa Jal. Yani while He sees you, yani to be aware of Him, worshipping Allah in fear, because you know Allah Azza wa Jal is looking at you and will hold you accountable. For this first level, some of the scholars, they call it maqam al-muraqabah or maqam al-khawf or maqam al-harab. If you see these terminologies, they're talking about the first level of ihsan that is recommended. وَيُحَذِّرُكُمُ اللَّهُ نَفْسَهُ. Allah warns you against himself. For this first level or rank is the one who is vigilant of Allah Azza wa Jal. When they pray or they enter the prayer, they are aware and they know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is observing him, that they are before Allah Azza wa Jal. وما تكون في شأن وما تتلو منه من قرآن ولا تعملون من عمل إلا كنا عليكم شهودا. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Surah Yunus, that we are witness over you. For this maqam, this rank, is worshipping Allah and worshipping Him whilst you're aware that He's looking at you. You firmly believe that Allah is looking at you. He sees you. He's hearing your words. He's observing the place you're in. He's witnessing your actions. For worshipping Allah while certain that He sees you. Or when you stand and you pray and you say Allahu Akbar, you are certain in your heart that Allah Azza wa Jalla He hears this from you. And if someone has this maqam, that Allah, as he knows that Allah Azza wa Jalla is hearing him, la shakka, how would he not want to perform his action or his worship correctly and properly? How could he not want to be more sincere? But this is the level of vigilance, as the scholars they mention, muraqabah. But he's aware that Allah Azza wa Jalla is looking at him in all of his worships. The second level or second rank is maqam al-mushahada. And this is where the Messenger ﷺ mentioned the hadith, and ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tara. Worship Allah as if you see him. And this is a higher rank. And some of the scholars, they also call this martabat al-shawq. And they also call it martabatu al-talab wa raghbah. But this second rank, which is a higher rank of ihsan, some of the scholars, they call it maqam al-mushahada. Some they call it martabat al-shawq. And some they call it martabat al-talab wa raghbah. The maqam mushahada basically means the rank of witnessing, as if he's seeing Allah Azza wa Jal. Or is also called martabat al-shawq, yani longing or desiring Allah Azza wa Jal, because you feel as if you see him. And some days call it martabat al-talab wa raghbah, the rank of seeing or desiring, because this person worships Allah Azza wa Jal with love, a yearning for this worship. He yearns to worship Allah Azza wa Jal because he feels that Allah Azza wa Jal is in his presence, in his ibadah. And this mushahada, yani, when we say that worship, when the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, "An ta'budullah ka'annaka tarahu," that this is worshipping Allah as if he is seeing him. Yani, this refers to the observation of Allah's attributes and not his essence. It doesn't mean the person sees Allah in his essence. It means he observes Allah, his attributes, by his heart. So when the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam says, كَأَنَّكَ تَرَاهُ, as if you see him, yani by the hearts. So, by your hearts. And this allows one to engage in worshipping with love and longing, as if you see who you worship, keeping your heart present in that worship from beginning to end. The Sufis, who are misled or misguided, they went astray in this. They claim that a person can see Allah in his essence, in his worship. And this is a falsehood. As the Messenger ﷺ, he said, وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّهُ لَنْ يَرَى أَحَدٌ مِنْكُمْ رَبَّهُ حَتَّى يَمُوتَ. No one will be able to see Allah in his essence in this life. قال الشيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله: كل من ادعى أنه رأى ربه بعينيه قبل الموت فدعواه باطلة باتفاق أهل السنة والجماعة. The one who claims that he sees Allah or his Lord with his eyes before death, then his claim is falsehood, and this is by agreement of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. But the meaning here is observing Allah's attributes. It's only possible to observe Allah's attributes, which means witnessing the effects of Allah's attributes, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the believer, the more they deepen their knowledge and certainty in Allah's attributes and names, and link everything that happens in Allah's dominion to a name of Allah Azza wa Jal or his characteristics, the more he will feel as if he is worshiping Allah, as if he is seeing him, yani by the heart. For this rank, al-maqam al-mushahada, is attained by having knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jal, his names and his attributes, and the effects in this dominion. Because once a person has knowledge of this, he appreciates and realizes the reality of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and can relate every matter that occurs in this earth to his attributes, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the more he'll be shy to fall short in his actions. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ حَقًّا يُسْتَحِ مِنْهُ. Allah Azza wa Jal is most deserving to be shy from. And this shows, ya ikhwata, the importance of knowing and learning the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more a servant understands Allah Azza wa Jal, la shakka, the more devoted he will be in worship, the further he will stay away from disobedience. And that's why the scholars, they say, كما قال الشيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله, knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the root of all knowledge, and it's the asl. Whoever knows Allah Azza wa Jal, he will know everything else. And whoever is ignorant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he will be ignorant of everything else, even himself. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Surah Al-Hashr, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُمْ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Do not be like those who forgot Allah, so He made them forget themselves. He made them forget themselves. For whoever forgets his Lord is made to forget his own essence, his self. For he knows neither his reality nor his interest. He forgets what leads him to righteousness and success in this life. ولذلك قال مالك بن دينار رحمه الله: مساكين أهل الدنيا خرجوا منها وما ذاقوا أطيب ما فيها. The people of this dunya, they've left and they have not tasted the greatest pleasure in this dunya. When he was asked, what is the greatest pleasure in this dunya? He said, Ma'rifatullah Azza wa Jal wa mahabbati, is to have knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to have love for him subhanahu wa ta'ala. La shak, this is the greatest pleasure, greatest enjoyment. Because our happiness, and we will speak about this in the fourth hadith, what is the meaning of happiness, how to attain happiness. Like in happiness, in summary, it's a question every single person asks, how to attain happiness. Every single person asks this question. Every single person is searching it. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, every single person on the face of this earth is tasting after happiness. That's why they do what they do. That's why they do what they do. No person desires to be depressed. And the summary of how to attain happiness is to follow the map that Allah Azza wa Jal has placed for the creation. Allah Azza wa Jal has given us a manual how to attain success and happiness, which is this religion of Al-Islam, worshipping Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. For the one who knows Allah Azza wa Jal and has this maqam and mushahada, he's worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal as if he is seeing Him. La shakka, that's the greatest enjoyment and pleasure for a servant. And that is why, as in the hadith of in Tirmidhi of Suhaib radiallahu anhu, the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he mentioned the hadith when the people of Jannah, a caller will call out and will say, will ask the people of Jannah if they are pleased And the people of Jannah will say, how can we not be pleased? Have our faces not been whitened? Have we not been saved from the hellfire? Have we not been admitted to paradise? For the veil will be lifted. The veil will be lifted from Allah. Allah Azza wa Jal will, Allah Azza wa Jal will lift the veil, and then they will say about Allah Azza wa Jal, and they will say that Allah Azza wa Jal, we have not been granted anything more beloved than looking at Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah, ya ikhwata, what greater pleasure is there than seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah azza, he mentioned his kitab Bada' al-Fawaid. If by the look of the creation, people cut their fingers when they saw Yusuf alayhi salam, people cut their fingers without realizing because of the amazement of what they were looking at. What is the case of looking at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? ولذلك, it was from the du'as of the Messenger alayhi salatu salam that he will make frequently. وَاسْأَلُكَ لَذَّةَ النَّظَرِ إِلَى وَجْهِكَ وَشَوْقِ إِلى لِقَائِكَ. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, لِلَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا الْحُسْنَ وَالزِّيَادَةِ. The people of Ihsan, they will be granted Al-Husna, which is Jannah. وَزِيَادَةِ, many of the Salaf, they say this means looking at the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. كما ذكر ابن جرير طبري رحمه الله في تفسيره. For the people of Ihsan will have the greatest reward to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter, because they worshipped Allah Azza wa Jal in the dunya, conscious that Allah Azza wa Jal is observing, and as if Allah Azza wa Jal is in front of him. For they will be rewarded to see Allah Azza wa Jal by the eyes in the hereafter. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from them. نعم اقرأ أخي.
أحسن الله عليكم. قال فأخبرني عن الساعة. قال ما المسؤول عنها بأعلم من السائل.
نعم. طيب, just to go back, inshallah. We mentioned ihsan in the Sharia means to complete the action in the most excellent manner. And this consists of three things in ibadah. صح? And we said al-ibadah, in worship, this consists of two levels. A level that is sufficient, that which is wajib, and a level that is recommended. That which is recommended consists of two ranks. Al-martabat al-muraqaba and al-martabat al-mushahada. And then we mentioned the second thing of that which the meaning of Sharia of ihsan, to have ihsan in, is fil hukuk, and the rights one owes to others. And al-ihsan fil hukuk is of two levels. The first level is martabat al-adl. This is the level of justice, which is to give each person their right as it is due. The second level is martabat al-fadl. This is the level of virtue, which is to increase in their rights or to decrease your own rights. So I'll give an example. The level of adl is, yani, from the rights of the wife, is that the husband has to spend upon her or spend on her, provide for her. For al-adl, martabat al-adl, the level of justice is to provide in that which suffices her food, shelter, and clothing. That's her right, yani, that which is wajib. The level of al-fadl, martabat al-fadl, is spending more than that, giving her gifts, treating her, etc. As Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, Inna Allah ya'muru bil-adli wal-ihsan. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He uh, commands justness and ihsan. The scholars, they say ihsan means that you give more than their rights. So the first level is martabat al-adl, okay? And the second level is martabat al-fadl. And the second level, martabat al-fadl, it has two conditions. The first is that it does not compromise justice. And the second is it does not lead to corruption. Okay? So martabat al-adl is giving the right as it is. Martabat al-fadl is giving more than the right or taking less. And if the right is yours, you take less. If the right belongs to someone else, you give more. Like in these two conditions, that it does not compromise justice. For martabat al-fadl is better than martabat al-adl because you're giving more. Okay? But it has to fulfill these two conditions. So for example, if a parent gives their child more than what they deserve without a reason, but he doesn't give it to his other children. So he's given fadl, he's given more than his rights. But this is not praiseworthy. Why? Because it undermines justice. He wasn't just. He didn't give it to all of his children. And the other condition is that it does not lead to corruption. For if you have a right over someone and forgiveness is an act of fadl, but if it is not deserved, then here is not praiseworthy. For example, if there's a known fasiq, corrupt person is known for harming the honor of Muslims. Here it is not said, and he's captured. So this person, he violates the honor of Muslims. If he was captured, okay, we don't say to forgive him and let him go, because if he was to forgive him and let him go, it will lead to more corruption. He's going to carry on stealing and harming the Muslims. But here we say uh, to act upon al-adl, to give the rights, and that is to punish him for that which he has the corruption that he has come with. But that's the meaning of al-ihsan fil huquq. As for the third matter, ihsan in other matters, it is to master any task that you perform, that which is permissible, like in worldly affairs. If someone's working as a mechanic, as an engineer, as a doctor, to master that. Inna Allah katib al-ihsan al-kulli shay. As the Messenger ﷺ said, Allah Azza wa Jal has created, or indeed Allah Azza wa Jal has created excellence for everything. But this is the meaning of ihsan in the Sharia. It can be ihsan fil ibadah, which we explained, Ihsan when it comes to hukuk in rights, and ihsan when it comes to other permissible worldly matters. Naam. For that which we took so far, it indicates to you that the religion consists of three ranks: Islam, Iman, and Ihsan. And each rank is defined, صح? Islam is defined through the outward actions. Iman was defined through the internal beliefs in the heart. And Ihsan is the completion of both of these. To worship Allah Azza wa Jal as if you see Him. If you do not see Him, then you know that He sees you, or you're aware that He's looking at you and seeing you and observing you. So these are the three ranks of the religion. And that is why uh, the Ahl they mention that there are three categories when it comes to Iman: Al Muslim, Wal Mu'min, Wal Muhsin. Okay, through this hadith, you can distinguish between these three categories. Recognize who is a Muslim, who is a Mu'min, and a believer, and who is a Muhsin, and a person of Ihsan. For this hadith, we understand that the highest rank is Ihsan, then Iman, and then Islam. And some of the early scholars, they've provided a metaphor to illustrate these three ranks. Uh, they drew three circles: a small circle surrounded by a larger circle, which is surrounded by an even larger circle. And they indicated that the small circle represents Ihsan, the broader one represents Iman, and the broadest one represents Islam. For when a servant first enters into the religion, he enters as a Muslim. He prays our prayer, he eats our slaughtered animals, huh? And he does what is obliged for him to do. So he enters uh, as a Muslim. But when he affirms his faith through the testimony, Shahadatain, adheres to the pillars, the obligations, he's become a Muslim. طبعا يعني it's not enough for a person to just perform the outward deeds. There must also exist inward iman in the hearts that validates upon his Islam. For a Muslim is the one who performs the outward deeds of Islam and possesses a heartfelt faith that corrects his Islam. As for if he performs outward deeds of Islam and he has no faith in his heart, that's a munafiq, that's a hypocrite. Okay. Then when Iman establishes itself firmly in his heart and solidifies, he then reaches the rank of a mu'min. And if he strengthens his Iman and strives with himself for the perfection of the worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he then reaches a station of al-ihsan, where he worships Allah as if he is seeing him. For this is why if you observe these three circles that we mentioned, you find that every muhsin is a mu'min. Every person of ihsan is a person of iman and a person of Islam. He's a Muslim as well. Because the circle of iman surrounds ihsan and the circle of Islam surrounds iman. For every believer, every mu'min is a Muslim and not the other way around. For not all Muslims are mu'min and not all mu'min are muhsin. But every mu'min is a Muslim and every muhsin is a mu'min and a Muslim. Now, now. طيب, and then the brother he read the next question. This is the last question that Jibril asked the Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam. He said, أخبرني عن الساعة. Inform me about the hour. And this word ساعة, the hour, as Al-Hafidh Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali rahimahullah, he said that the reason Jibril asked the Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam this question about the hour, inform me about the hour, is to highlight that this knowledge is exclusive to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And no one from his creation will know the answer to this. And that is because the Messenger والسلام, was often asked about this. That is why you see in the Quran many, many verses. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ السَّاعَةِ. They are asking you, O Muhammad, about the hour. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla says, قُلْ إِنَّمَا عِلْمُهَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. Say, indeed, the knowledge of it is with Allah Azza wa Jalla. Many verses you see in the Quran. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ السَّاعَةِ يَسْأَلُونَكَ السَّاعَةِ. For that is the reason, Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, he mentioned this is why Jibril asked this question, to emphasize and highlight that this is something only Allah Azza wa Jalla has knowledge of. And you will see in the Quran, often when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He speaks about uh, the hour, when Allah Azza wa Jalla speaks about the hour, He You will see in the Quran when Allah Azza speaks about the hour, He will mention number one that the knowledge of it is only with Him, and number two that the time is close. You will see these two things. يسألك الناس عن الساعة قل إنما علمها عند الله وما يدريك لعل الساعة تكون قريبا. People ask you concerning the hour, say knowledge of it is only with Allah. And what may make you perceive perhaps the hour is near. اقتربت الساعة, as Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned. اقتربت الساعة حسابهم وهم في غفلة معرضون. اقترب الوعد وعد الحق. And in the beginning of Surah Al-Qamar, اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر. For you will see when Allah Azza wa Jalla speaks about the Sa'ah, He mentions two things. Number one, knowledge of it, it's only with Him. And number two, that the timing is close, the hour is close. طيب. As for the word Sa'ah, which means the hour, someone may ask, why is the day of judgment? Why is it called the hour? When you're saying the hour, it's talking about the day of judgment. Why is it called the hour when we know that the day of judgment will be a long duration? Some of the scholars they say the reason why it is called the hour, like in the Hadith, the reason why Jibril said أخبرني ساعة about the hour is because either that this day will be, or one of the reasons because this day will be for the believers like an hour, as is common in the Hadith of that's narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri anhu, that it was said to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, that a day whose duration is 50,000 years, how long this day is. And the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, by the one in whose hand is in my soul, it will be made easier for the believer until it will be lighter for him than a prescribed prayer he performs in this dunya. For some of the scholars, the reason they say it's called Sa'ah because upon the believer it will be considered like an hour. Some of the scholars they say it's called the Sa'ah, a hour, or the hour, because it surprises people suddenly at an hour, and all the creation will die with a single blast. Hatta if someone was to bite a food, he will not be able to swallow it. It will be sudden. If two men have garment, عفوا, there's a verse in the Surah Yasin, ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون. إيش الآية؟ الآية في سورة ياسين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون. نعم, that's the verse I believe. Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned Surah Yasin that ما ينظرون إلا صيحة, they're not waiting except for the single shout or the blast that will seize them. تأخذهم وهم يخصمون, whilst they're disputing in their trades. Yani meaning, whilst they're quarreling in their markets and transactions, they will die in their places whilst they're buying and selling. So it will be sudden. People will not expect it. ولذلك قال ابن منظور رحمه الله, قال أبو إسحاق الزجاج, that the hour is a name for the time when people will be struck down. He said the hour, as-sa'a, is the time when people will be struck down and the time they will be resurrected for the judgment. And when the day of resurrection occurs, it is named the hour because it is quick and it surprises the people in an instant, causing all of the humanity to perish at the first trumpet or the sound of the first trumpet. Some of the scholars they say the reason it's called the Sa'ah because despite of its length, yani the day of judgment, it is like an hour in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وما أمر الساعة إلا كلمح البصر وهو أقرب عند الله على كل شيء قدير. As Allah as mentioned Surah Al-Nahl, and the matter of the hour is but like a twinkling of an eye, or even closer, and into Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And some scholars they say the reason it's called a Sa'ah is because of the swift reckoning. ويوم تقوم الساعة يقسم المجرمون ما لبثوا غير الساعة. And Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وهو أسرع الحاسبين, He's the swiftest of accountants. And the fifth, that some scholars they say it is called a Sa'ah, يعني تسمية لكل باسم البعض. It is naming a part of the whole. And then the meaning is the first hour. Ash-Shawkani rahimahullah, he said this, he said, سميت ساعة لأنها تقوم في آخر ساعة من ساعة الدنيا. The reason it's called the hour because it takes place in the last hour of this dunya, of this world. For that is the reason why it's called a sa'a. Yani some of the scholars they mention one of these five reasons. طيب فhe said فأخبرني عن الساعة, inform me about the hour. And the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said ما المسؤول عنها بأعلم أو بأعلم من السائل. ما المسؤول عنها بأعلم من السائل. The questioner knows as much as the answer, meaning that the knowledge of the hour is a concealed matter that Allah Azza wa Jal has kept to himself and has withheld from the creation. Hatta even an angel or a prophet does not know. And as I mentioned, you will see this in the Quran when Allah Azza wa speaks about the timing of the hour. He will say, or he will mention, number one, that the knowledge of it is only with him, and number two, that the time of it is very close. And there are wisdoms, yani, there are wisdoms why Allah Azza wa Jal has concealed the knowledge of the hour from his creation. And from that is to demonstrate Allah's greatness. No one is equal to him in his knowledge. And from that is it's a mercy for his servants. Because if the servant was to know this, they may become lazy. If they were to know their lifespan, uh, they may become lazy. صح? That's from the wisdoms why, for example, Laylat al-Qadr is hidden from us the actual nights. So the servant strives in each night so he can get more reward. For likewise, Allah Azza wa Jalla has hidden from us the last hour because it benefits the servant. It is from His mercy for His servants. If a person knew his time, he may sin his whole life, and when the time comes closer to the hour, that's when he will start repenting. Like if he does not know the hour, then he's always on his toes. صح? He does not know when it's going to hit him. And also, from the wisdom is to test the faith of the servants. To test the faith of the servants in having belief of the last day, in the signs or the last hour, believing in the unseen. نعم. اقرأ.
أحسن الله إليكم. قال فأخبرني عن عماراتها. قال أن تلد الأمة ربتها، وأن ترى الحفاة العراة عالة رياء أشياء يتطاولون في البنيان.
نعم. Then he mentioned, طيب, inform me of its signs. What are the signs of the hour? And this word, أخبرني عن أماراتها. أماراتها has the same meaning as some of you will see in the Kitab or the Sunnah. When they say signs of the hour, they also mention ayah, the word ayah, or alama, alamatuha, or imara. But they all have the same meaning. It basically means the events that precede the hour that indicates or signals the hour. And the Messenger والسلام, he mentioned here two minor signs. Okay, many of the scholars when they divide the signs of the hour, there's many different types of taqsimat that the scholars they mention, and it's amru istilahi, and it's based on ijtihad. There's no delil for it. Like in that which is known, many of the scholars are mashhur, that many of the scholars they mention when they divide the signs of the hours, they divide it into four. They say number one, minor signs that have occurred and ended. Number two, minor signs that have occurred and continue and may repeat. Number three, minor signs that have not occurred yet. And number four, major signs. That's how they divide the signs. And here the Messenger ﷺ, he mentions two that falls under the second category. Yani minor signs that have occurred and continue and may repeat. But he said the first sign, that the slave girl will give birth to her mistress, and that you will see the barefooted, the naked, the destitute, the herdsmen of the sheep competing with each other in raising lofty buildings. And some of the scholars they differed in the meaning of the first sign that the Messenger ﷺ mentioned, that the slave girl will give birth to her mistress. Some of the scholars differed in regards to the meaning of this. And some of the scholars they say the meaning of this is that the disobedience will become so prevalent that a child treats his mother like a master. Yani he treats his own mother like a slave, by cursing, beating, using, and insulting her. And this is something apparent today for Allah Musta'an. Al-Hafidh Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, he said this is the more apparent. Yani the meaning of this, that the female servant will give birth to her mistress, the more apparent, Ibn Hajar rahimahullah mentioned, is that the disobedience will become so prevalent that a child will treat his mother like a master will treat his slave. A child will treat his mother like how a master will treat a slave. And some of the scholars, they say the meaning is that the number of slaves or concubines increases and the children become numerous. So the female slave is considered a property of her master, and her children are regarded as his. But the master's children are treated as he is. So the children will become like their master. And some Ahlul Ilm, they say the meaning is that the child will be born from the maid servants, and this is a reason for his mother to be freed upon the death of the father, yani the master. So the freeing of this female servant is attributed to the child because he is the cause of it. And some of the scholars, they say the meaning is that ignorance increases and knowledge decreases until the mothers of the children are sold while they have children, and perhaps they change hands among owners, and the periods extend until some of the children buy them, yani using them without knowing that they are their mothers. So these are the four more uh, widespread opinions that Ahlul mentioned in regards to the meaning of أن تلد الأمة ربتها وأن ترى الحفاة العراة أو تلد الأمة ربتها. As for the second sign that the Messenger والسلام, he mentioned that the barefoot and the naked and the poor shepherds of sheep will compete in building high structures or high buildings. For al-hufata is the one who has no shoes on his feet. Urata is the one who has no clothing on their body. Ri'a al-allata afwan is the one that is poor. And the meaning is the one that is from the lowest of the people. They will become leaders. Their wealth will increase. They will be the one who will erect tall buildings to boast and brag over servants of Allah, the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, he mentioned the essence of what has been mentioned regarding the signs of the hour in this hadith. He said it refers to the fact that matters will be entrusted to those who are not worthy of it. But the barefoot and the naked shepherds of the sheep, the one who are ignorant, are not civilized, will become the leaders of the people. They will be the ones who will be rich. They will be the ones will have wealth. And they will take pride in it. And there will be corruption because of this. Because leadership is given to the people that are not worthy for it. And there are other hadith that indicate this meaning. From the hadith Amr ibn Qais al-Kindi radiallahu anhu, he said that I was with Abil Fawaris wa ana ghulam shabab, when I was a young lad or young kid, and I saw people gathered around a man, and I asked, who is this? They said, Abdullah ibn Amr ibn As. Abdullah ibn Amr ibn As. And he said, I heard him narrate from the Messenger والسلام, that he said, among the signs of the hour, أن ترفع الأشرار وتوضع الأخيار, that the wicked will be elevated and the good will be brought down. Yani the foolish will be the ones that are elevated. We see that today. The foolish are the one that will be elevated, and the ones of good are the one that will be brought down. For these are the two signs that the Messenger والسلام, that he mentioned, and the having iman in the signs of hour, the importance of it comes from the importance of believing in the day of judgment. For believing in the signs of the hour means believing in the introduction of the day of judgment, because there are signs, and it's a part of the day of judgment, are signs to indicate the end of the hour and the next life. So Allah Azza wa Jalla has made them yani, signs that precede the end of time to indicate its closeness. For this gives a servant desire to perform obedience, to be eager in it, hoping for Allah's reward, having fear when committing a sin, being content when falling into a sin, due to the fear of the punishment of that day. And that is why it is extremely important to learn about the signs of the hour, the day of judgment, because the more knowledge you have of this, the more real it will be for you. This is why seeking knowledge is extremely important, ikhwan. Do not ever get bored of salam. Do not ever get bored of seeking knowledge. Do not ever get bored of seeking knowledge. Hatta if you're even feeling hardship in a lesson, to sit in a lesson for a long time, جاهد نفسك يعني strive. Because you're more in need of this knowledge than anything else. It is by knowledge that these things become real for you. Jannah, Jahannam becomes real for you. Because certainty is by one of three ways. So having certainty of something is by either one of three ways. Either by ما يسمى حق اليقين, certainty by experiencing that thing. As Allah Azza wa Jalla He says, إن هذا له الحق اليقين, by actually experiencing it, feeling it, etc. Or either ما يسمى عين اليقين, eye of certainty. You're certain by it because you have seen it by the eye. As Allah Azza wa Jalla He says, ثم لترنها عين اليقين. You surely sit with the eye of certainty. Or either by علم اليقين, ما يسمى علم اليقين, knowledge by certainty by knowledge. As Allah Azza wa Jalla He says, كلا لو تعلمون علم اليقين. Out of these three, what type of certainty can we get when it comes to the unseen, when it comes to having iman in Allah, iman in the day of judgment? Only one of them, صح? We cannot see it by the eye, nor can we experience it right now, whilst we're in this life. The closest we can get to certainty of the unseen is by knowledge. The more knowledge we have of these matters, ya ikhwata, the more we study these matters, even if we have heard it before, the more you repeat it, listen to it, go over it, the more certain you have. لذلك Allah Azza wa Jalla He says, إنما يخشى الله من عباد العلماء. Those who truly have khashya of Allah are who? Huh? Are the scholars, because of knowledge. For the more one knows details about the hereafter, including its signs, knowing about its signs, the more one's iman increases. But these signs are a reminder that time is getting closer, to wake a person up from negligence, to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanallah, wallahi, ya ikhwata, do not give concern to this life. ما هو الدنيا إلا قليل. What is this dunya except small? What is left of it is small. So prepare for that day. When we hear about the signs of the hour, our concern as Muslims is not when is the hour going to happen. Our concern as Muslim is, have we prepared for the hour? When we speak about the signs of the hour, that's what we should be concerned about. That's what we should be thinking about. What have we prepared for the hour? And from the most beneficial that you read on the subject when it comes to sign of the hour, Shaykh Abdul Karim Al-Khudair, Hafidhahullah, he mentioned three books. Okay, التذكرة لقرطبي, النهاية لحافظ بن كثير رحمه الله, واتحاف الجماعة لأتويجري. These are the three most beneficial books, or from the most beneficial books on this subject. نعم.
أحسن الله إليكم. قال ثم انطلق فلبثت مليا ثم قال لي يا عمر أتدري من السائل؟ قلت الله ورسوله أعلم. قال فإنه جبريل أتاكم يعلمكم دينكم.
نعم. This is the end of the hadith. Then he said, Umar رضي الله عنه, ثم انطلق, the man went off. فلبثت مليا, I waited a while, and then the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said, Oh Umar, do you know who the questioner was? For Umar رضي الله عنه, he said, Allah and His Messenger know best. And then the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said, it's Jibreel, he came to teach you your religion. فلبثت مليا, Umar رضي الله عنه, he said, I waited a while. And there's different narrations في روايات في أبي داود وترمذي that he said فلبثت ثلاثا, I waited or I stayed for 3 days. Some narrations he waited for 3 days. And other narrations that the man left and the Messenger ﷺ said to go to the man, return to the man. And they went to look for him and did not see him. So then they came back. And then the Messenger ﷺ said to Umar, do you know who that man was? Uh, Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, I waited 3 days. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, he answered, he said that, how come the Messenger alayhi salam didn't inform Umar straight away? Why was it after 3 days? Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, he said that which is apparent that Umar radiallahu anhu, he had to leave the majlis because something has come up. For the Messenger alayhi salam, he informed everyone else that was in the gathering, but Umar radiallahu anhu was not there. So after 3 days, when the Messenger alayhi salam saw Umar, he then informed him, and that shows how much the Messenger alayhi loves Umar radiallahu anhu and his status. ف فلبثت مليا. فthe Messenger alayhi asked him, do you know who this man was? And the answer of Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, Allah and his Messenger knows best. Allahu Rasulu a'lam. But when it comes to ahkam al-shar'i in his lifetime, in the lifetime of the Messenger alayhi, if you do not know a matter, you say Allah and his Messenger know best. However, after the death of the Messenger alayhi, it is to say Allah knows best. Allahu a'lam. So we say now, after the Messenger alayhi passed away, if a ruling is mentioned, we say Allahu a'lam. Okay? And there's a benefit of Umar anhu saying this, Allahu wa Rasulu a'lam. It shows from the good manners when a student is asked by their teacher whether they know something or not. Okay? If they do not know, they should not say I know out of shyness, because this will be lying. And likewise, they should not say, if they do know, they should not avoid saying I know, because they should avoid saying I know. If they do know the answer, they should not say I know, because they will miss out on the blessing of their teacher's words or the sheikh's words and the additional benefits that they can gain beyond what they already know. So instead, they should say Allahu A'lam. Does that make sense? From good manners, when a student is asked by the teacher, if the teacher, the sheikh, is asking a student a question, if he does not know the answer, he should not say I know, because he's lying. If he does know the answer, he should avoid saying I know. Rather, he should say Allahu A'lam, so he can get extra benefit from the sheikh. I remember when we studied in the village of our sheikh Muhammad Sayyid Raslan, Hafidullah, in Egypt, the first thing, the first day I went there, the first thing I heard the sheikh he say, and it's the first benefit I took from the sheikh, the first sitting I was in, and it stuck to my head because it's the first words I heard from the sheikh, Hafidullah. He said these words. He said that the first thing every student of knowledge must ingrain in himself is to learn I don't know. That's the first thing every student of knowledge should learn. Learn I don't know. And in the institute of the sheikh, in the markaz, they made us memorize pages of evidences from the kitab and the sunnah and aqwal al-salaf, emphasizing the importance of saying I don't know. فلذلك قال أبو ذيال, he said, تعلم لا أدري, learn to say I don't know. فإنك إن قلت, if you say I do not know, they will teach you until you know. And if you say I know, they will question you until you do not know. And we live in a time, عجيب الحال. People feel no shame or shyness in answering questions of the deen. حتى some may even get happy when they're asked questions. Wallahi amana ya ikhwan. Answering the question about the deen is not a light matter. It's not like answering a worldly question. It's a amana. You're speaking on behalf of Allah Azza wa Jal, speaking on the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. ولذلك قال أشعث رحمه الله, Muhammad bin Sirin رحمه الله, when he was asked a question, Muhammad bin Sirin من السلف, from the كبار التابعين, when he was asked a question about something related to halal or haram, it was said that his face will change color, as if he's not the same person now. Because they saw this as a big thing, answering a question of the deen. Imam Malik rahimahullah, when he was asked about a mas'ala, he said, La adri. And it was said to him, but this is an easy matter. And how are you saying that? How are you saying La adri? It's a light matter, easy mas'ala. So Imam Malik, he became angry. قال ليس في العلم شيء خفيف. There is nothing in this deen that is considered knowledge that is light. Have you not heard the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal? إِنَّا سَنُلْقِي عَلَيْكَ قَوْلًا ثَقِيلًا. We will cast upon you a heavy word. Sa'id bin Musayyib, rahimahullah, from the Kibar or Tabi'een, عالم من علماء التابعين. حتى there's kalam about him specifically in Mustalah Hadith because of his station. It is said about him that he will rarely issue a fatwa or saying anything except that he will make dua before it. Allahumma sallimni wa sallim minni. Allah, keep me safe and keep others safe from me. For the more knowledge one has, the more he will fear to answer. The more ignorant one is, the more happy and uh, brave they are to answer questions of the deen. As Abdullah bin Masud radiallahu anhu, he said, whoever answers every question or gives a fatwa to every question is asked, this person I consider him majnoon. He's insane. He doesn't have sanity. It's not a light matter, ya ikhwata. Suhnun rahimahullah, he said, I've memorized masail. Some have more than 8 opinions from 8 different scholars. But how can you expect me to answer a question quickly without carefully choosing? I remember our Sheikh Abdul Muhsin Al-Abbad, Muhaddith al-Medina, Hafidhahullah, when he was teaching us Sahih al-Bukhari around 7 years ago. He was teaching us Sahih al-Bukhari in the Masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. And I remember this like yesterday. After every class, there was a Q&A on the microphone. I remember this like yesterday. One of the lessons, he was asked 7 questions in a row. He said la adri. 7 questions in a row. He said la adri. And this is Sheikh Abdul Muslim Al-Abbad. It's not for him to say la adri. It's not like us to say la adri. He's considered a scholar of the scholars. People are looking up to him, looking for his answers. But for him to say la adri is a big thing. So it's harder for him than it is for us. I remember once I asked him a question privately as well in the university, and it was about insurance, a question about insurance. And the Sheikh, he began to answer me, and then he paused, and he thought for a second, and then he said, La adri. For these are people who know the reality of answering a question. It's a man. It's not a light thing. But do not feel shy to say La adri. How many think it's shameful to say La adri? The reality is talking in that which you do not have knowledge of is that which is shameful. Number one, because if you fear you're looking foolish, if you feel that you look foolish to say, I don't know that you look more foolish to try and answer bravely. It's apparent. When a person does not know the answer and he's trying to answer, it's obvious he does not know the answer. So he makes himself look even more foolish in the first place. And number two, Allah Azza wa Jal gives honor to the person that is sincere. If you answer fearing that you're trying to please the people, then there's no sincerity in that. Where do you expect honor to come from? Is honor going to come from the people of Allah or Allah Azza wa Jal? Allah huwa Razzaq. ولذلك قال ابن صرح رحمه الله وقد صار لا أدري عند أهل زماننا هذا عيبا. He said that in my time, and he was born in the year 250 Hijri, okay? He said in our time is people see it as a aib, as a defect or a flaw to say I don't know. If he's saying that in his time, what would be the case today? Well, we have young children giving fatwa on the social media, answering people's questions. And something I can't comprehend how people even ask these people questions. Some people asking questions. I remember someone showed me 50, it looks like 12 years old or 13 years old, giving fatwa online, and people, grown men and women, are asking him questions. Allahu musta'an. How can one be shy saying la adri when the best of the creation in the heavens and the earth said la adri? The angels, the Jibreel said la adri, and the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said la adri. The Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam said la adri, as is come in the Hadith about narrated by Ibn Umar, and there's another narration by Jabir ibn Mut'im radiallahu anhu, that when the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam was asked by a man, أي بقعة خير? What are the best of places and what are the worst of places? The Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam said لا أدري. But Jibreel came to the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, so the Messenger asked Jibreel, what are the worst places on the earth and what are the best of places on the earth? For Jibreel said لا أدري, I don't know. Let me ask Allah. Let me ask Mara. And then he came back after asking Allah, and he came back and he said the worst of places are the markets, supermarkets, and the best of places the masajid. فكيف تستحي? How can one feel shy to say لا أدري when the most knowledgeable creation said لا أدري? The best of creation, the heavens and the earth, said لا أدري. ولذلك قال الشيخ بكر بن زيد رحمه الله, if half of knowledge is to say I don't know, because many of the Salaf, they say half of knowledge is لا أدري. If half of knowledge is to say لا أدري, then half of ignorance is to say it is said or I think. فانتبه لهذا. Be upon the path of the Salaf, يا إخوة. Fear Allah Azza wa Jalla in matters. Know your limits. Wallahi, if people stayed quiet in that which they have no knowledge about, so many issues will be solved and so many crotch will be removed. The issues we see today and the problems because people have no knowledge of speaking, that which they are not ليس qualified, not qualified لا أهلا له. الله المستعان. Then he said هذا جبريل فهذا جبريل أتاكم يعلمكم دينكم. Then the Messenger عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said, he finished the hadith, he said that this is Jibreel, he came to teach you your religion. But this statement indicates that this hadith encompasses the religion. And this is why, as you mentioned in the beginning, some scholars refer this hadith as the mother of the Sunnah, as the Sunnah is summarized in this hadith, like the Quran is summarized by Surah Al-Fatiha, which is known as Al-Kitab, the mother of the book. ولعلنا we'll stop there إن شاء الله تعالى. هذا شرح الحديث الطويل العظيم باختصار بما يناسب المقام. صلى الله عز وجل أن يفقهني وإياكم في دينه، وأن يجعلنا وإياكم من عباده الصالحين الذين يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه، وأن يجعلنا وإياكم من محب رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الذين يحبون كلامه ويحبون سنته ويعملون بها. الله تعالى أعلى وأعلم وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا وسلم. I apologize for going over time. I just wanted to complete the hadith, and I didn't want to go in extreme detail because I wanted to finish the hadith today, because next week more likely I will not be available to do a class. So I thought it was appropriate to finish the hadith today, and then when we start the next hadith, which may be the week after next, or maybe the week after that, we can start a new hadith بإذن الله تعالى. بارك الله في الجميع وفقكم الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.